Now, as a woman in GRC, I'm very much looking forward to our next session. But if you are not a woman in GRC, you should still stick around. Allies are important. Next up, we have Women Leading the Way, Shaping the Future of GRC, sponsored by CoreStream and Impero. This session is brought to you by CoreStream's Marketing Director, Lucy Montague. Over to you, Lucy.
Hi, Nicola. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Lucy Montague, Head of Marketing at CoreStream GRC, the headline sponsor of the Women in GRC Awards happening on the 2nd of July, and the host of the Spotlight on Women in GRC podcast. I'm joined today by a group of inspiring leaders, each of whom have previously won a Women in GRC award. So this should be a very thoughtful discussion where we weave in research insights and our panelists' real-life experiences. If you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat and we'll aim to pick those up and answer as many as we can towards the end of the session. So to get started, we'll bring in our leaders. We'll begin with Sharon Sharples, the OP Risk and Risk Oversight Chief of Staff at Barclays. Hi, Sharon.
Hey, Lucy. Hi. So Sharon Sharples. I've worked in financial services for over 30 years now, but just spent the last 6 years working in operational risk and everything to do with that at Barclays. I'm really pleased to be here to talk about a topic that's really close to my heart.
Lovely, thank you. We have Rebecca McLean, the Risk Director at AXA Commercial. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for introing me. As you said, I'm Rebecca. I am the Risk Director at AXA UK for the insurance business. I've been in financial services, not quite as long as Sharon, but not far off, so over 20 years. And I've worked across different financial services sectors during that time. I've spent the most time in risk roles, and for the last 15 years in senior leadership positions in risk.
Lovely, lots to discuss then. And then lastly, we have Ricky Stamp-Skov, the CEO of Impero. Hello, Ricky, how are you?
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm Ricky, Danish name, Danish national, calling in out of Copenhagen. I'm the CEO of Impero, a European GRC platform provider. I'm also a non-executive director, and I have quite some experience as audit committee chair. I'm a former partner in PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in risk assurance services, and the executive search partnership at Just Branson. So really, really pleased to be here today with you, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for making the time. We're going to dive straight in and get into the hard questions. So we're going to begin with the McKinsey study that has said that some companies are scaling back their DE&I sponsorship and career development programs, despite companies with strong DE&I performances seeing up to 35% higher financial returns. How does your business foster inclusive culture and advance diversity? Sharon, I'm asking you that question first.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So something that I've been very active in this space for some time now, and Barclays are fantastic in terms of trying to build it into the fabric of everything that we do. They give people space and empower them to kind of self-solve effectively. And some of the things that we've been doing, they don't cost money. They just need some kind of active colleagues who are passionate about these types of things to run them. So we often have speed networking events. Being a global team, we tend to do most of them virtually as well, which means that you can connect colleagues across the globe with people more senior, junior, etc., having some interesting conversations about whatever is important to them, often very focused on development and how they kind of progress to the next level, etc. In a similar vein, again, promoting sponsorships, they're kind of moving people into that, how do I now get the sponsors to move me into the next level role, and getting the support in order to do that. We've also got a mentoring program, which is a 360 mentoring activity, which runs every year. And we get colleagues, we've got over 500 colleagues in our risk team alone engaged in that and actively participating. Again, these are all things people can do for one another, doesn't need HR or anybody else to get involved. We just make this stuff happen from the side of our desks. And then we've started last year to put together a program which we've called Elevate. And as what we found was we've got a lot of talented colleagues who want to get along, and again, we're struggling to get the right support and motivation, but only a few get onto the Barclays programs, official programs. So we were like, right, we've got, again, a lot of good leaders who've got the knowledge, experience, and can give that guidance and support to colleagues. So we've been running a program where they go through that, supporting one another, having kind of panels, storytelling from leaders, and then we've just culminated that into kind of a bit of a Dragon's Den type exercise at the end, where they can kind of pay it forward in terms of coming up with some ideas and suggestions for improvements and things. So they feel like they're actually getting to do that and make a real difference. You know, we try and do a bit of focus on people with diverse backgrounds and stuff, but we've started to move it to be inclusive. You know, everybody's got a story to tell, everybody's got a different background. And there had been, I guess, a bit of fatigue about people going, oh, it's all about getting women in the room, you know. And so it's kind of trying to change the narrative slightly in order to kind of go, no, we're just trying to make this a nice place for people to want to work, to feel like they belong, whatever their background, whatever their gender, whatever, you know, diversity traits someone might have, and just make it all about everybody and making things, you know, super supportive, and like I said, where people feel like they're comfortable and can be themselves.
Lovely, lots of inclusion pieces there. Rebecca, what are you doing over in AXA?
I mean, I do hear a lot of people, or a lot of firms, are scaling back their DE&I programs, but I definitely haven't seen any of that in AXA. Quite the reverse. It's still really integrated into our people offering. We really want to create an environment where people can get in and thrive, and where everybody feels included and that they belong and they feel safe. So we've got a lot of networks that are targeted to kind of give additional focus to underrepresented groups. What I would say about those networks are brilliant, and I'm engaged in but they do tend to target people who are really aware of the need for inclusivity, and they are really engaged on that basis. But we are also doing a lot of work to try and engage people who maybe don't feel like inclusion and belonging is a topic that is really for them, because it is for them, it's for everybody. So we've run quite a lot of unconscious bias training to our senior leadership team, trying to get people to recognise how we all have bias and how it can play out in the workplace. It's not a bad thing. It's not about shaming people. It's just about recognising bias in yourself and coming up with a few practical ways of how you can counter that in your everyday work. So we did a particular exercise that worked really well with our senior leadership team, which is we do have a growing female population there, and we see our diversity in that group expanding, but it is still quite male dominated. So we did an exercise that is called 5 People That You Trust. So we got everyone to write down 5 people, it could be in a work setting or outside of work, who they really trust, and then try and recognise some characteristics about those people. And I think what people found is quite often the people in their circle of trust are people that look like them, and it just gave us the opportunity to talk about that importance of cognitive diversity. So I think, you know, we're still keeping the focus there. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm an impatient person, and I think, you know, progress is slow, unfortunately. In 2019 there was something like 6 female CEOs in FTSE 100 companies, and then they've looked at it again 6 years later, there's still only 9. So it's progress, but it's slow progress, which just shows you there's still work to do, but a lot of people picking up that baton and doing that work.
Lovely. And I'm sure many in the audience are now thinking about those 5 people that they trust and questioning how diverse is that group. We're so lucky to have a female CEO on the call. So Ricky, from your perspective, what do you guys do at your company to help foster that culture of inclusion?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we are a much smaller entity than both AXA and Barclays, obviously. But being the CEO, I have the opportunity to first of all, of course, try to foster using some of the same means, but at a smaller scale, but definitely also to step in when I see the bias. And I have I'm fairly old actually, so I have some strong personal experiences, both from being promoted and helped, but also from being unaware of the game that I was apparently playing. So learned a lot from that. And I have a small story that I would like to share on that one. I was part of a cybersecurity consultancy that we built many years ago. We sold it to PwC. I came in there alongside a colleague, and after a year and a half, he was appointed partner. And I was like, we were at the same level, and I actually had a larger responsibility than he did. And I was like, now I will mind my words, but I said, oh my, what happened? I have said it slightly different at the day. And I went up to the senior partner and I said, hey, what happened here? Why did he get that promotion and I'm still at my senior manager level? He skipped the director level and everything. And he said, well, he asked. And I was like, oh, I just learned that there's a game here that I didn't know the rules. So I started to figure out what are the rules. And I spent a lot of energy on actually helping others understand the rules of whatever game they are playing, or telling them where can you go and figure out what the rules are. So it's very much about how I can facilitate that for others, and sometimes also step in towards one of my female employees and say, maybe you don't have to serve the coffee at the meetings. Maybe you won't have any coffee because nobody will serve it, but then who cares? You will survive that 1 hour. So really try to alter some of these habits that we all have, and the roles that we have learned from our grandmothers who learned it from their grandmothers, etc., etc. So old stuff that we carry with us, and try to make not only the male aware of biases, also the females aware of whatever bias we might drag into any room or any conversation.
Yeah, that's a mic drop moment. The well, he asked does make you think, where are those times where we didn't ask out of politeness and we really should have? That's a great point. Thank you, Ricky. Moving into our next question, how can we create more equitable and effective GRC teams? In particular, how do we get more women into GRC? Rebecca, over to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a role that I see a lot of women entering anyway. So I think something is working well here, because I do see, if I look around our GRC team, and if I look around my team and some of the other teams we have around AXA, there is a really high proportion of females in that team. So I think something's working quite organically well to get more women in. I don't always think we do a great story of talking about how interesting a role in GRC can be. You know, from my perspective, long gone are the days when we are a block or seen as a business prevention unit, which is all things I've said about risk and compliance teams in the past. I genuinely think that and that things have moved on, and we are seen as an enabling function with a huge amount of expertise to add to strategic business decisions. And I think if we can skill set recognized in that way, just in the same way as a finance skill set is recognized as bringing something important to the table, and HR skill set is recognized, GRC skill set should be recognized in exactly the same way. And if you get that right and you position yourself right and you show the value you're adding at that table, it provides a really exciting career. From my perspective, we've worked really hard to embed the risk team into key decision forums, committees, so that we're there live. We're not providing risk dashboards, we're actually in the room, and we're influencing the strategy of the firm, and that's a really exciting place to be. The only other person I think that probably has the breadth of the role that we do is probably the CEO and maybe the finance director as well, in terms of all the different things that you can get involved in. I think we need to sell the role a little bit more and shout about how much of a great match it is for a female skill set. And I don't want to generalize, different females have different skills, we all bring something different to the table, but the fact that we are having so much success with female talent rising through the ranks in AXA risk teams shows that it provides a really great and meaningful values-led career for women.
I love that. Sharon, could you give me a bit of information into your background and how you actually got into GRC?
Yeah, so I'm not, I guess, a risk expert by trade, but a change management expert. So spent probably almost 20 years of my career doing project and program management and change. and leading that across a number of financial services. And I then started to realise actually what I'd been doing as a project manager was risk management. So, looking at what could go wrong, trying to prevent those things from going wrong, speaking to the, getting everybody around the table, making sure those decisions were being made collectively. And obviously, you've got your RAID logs and things like that are like your risk management part of the project manager role. But actually, I think the whole thing is just about making sure things land safely. There's no issues with your tech or your people or whatever. So when unfortunately I needed to change roles quickly, the only role that was kind of on the table was in a risk team, and I was like, oh, can I even do this? But actually, I recognised quite quickly that the transferable skills I had were huge, and actually the thought process, the way that I approach things, having been a project manager all of my life, has just led then to transition into risk really, really easily. And I think there is that kind of need to try and demystify risk and actually the variety of roles that there are in risk. And I'm sure the same with, compliance and governance type activities, as I think people can't necessarily join the dots that easily. So I think it's quite helpful to have sessions like this where people can see actually I've, not grown up in that kind of part of the business at all, and I've been able to move very seamlessly across from something. So I do try and tell quite a lot of people, it's like you have to think about your skill set and what skills are needed and the mindset and the approach. People who are analytical are going to work really, really well in some of the risk teams and stuff like that. So think a bit broader rather than just someone who's an expert in that field necessarily.
Mm. So the breadth of skills and also transferable skills, the amount of women that I've spoken to, and I asked them, how did you get into GRC? And everyone seems to say they fell into it and then they stayed because they really enjoyed it. So that's really great. Ricky, I'm going to ask you a question around mentoring now. 28% of women with mentors reach senior leadership versus 19% without. How has mentoring helped you in your career, and what makes a mentoring relationship effective rather than just performative? Do you have a mentor?
Actually, I don't right now. I had one who was the CEO in the first company that I joined when I was 23, and I had him for many years after I left the company. And it was so helpful to have an external party give you advice, and where you could, I have my chairman, for instance, but I will share some things with him, but I won't share everything with him. Sorry, Jan, if you're listening in here. But it's like, it's a different relationship. So that has been so helpful for me. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. And I've been thinking about, okay, where do I find that next mentor? Because it's a very important person to have in your life. That being said, having mentees, I believe, is actually it's like you get a lot of mentoring you get mentored by having a mentee. Very often I have someone who is of another generation, and I get so many new perspectives and so many ideas as to, okay, how can I develop and what can I do differently to be, for instance, more inclusive or to make other people shine. So I think this reciprocity in mentoring is super important, and you can't just go in there and I'm the mentor and I'll tell you how to do. But it's really about, you can get so much back if you jump into the role. And it's coming back to one of Rebecca's points. When you see the entry level at, say, the big 4 audit companies, it's approximately 50-50 male female. And then you look at the partner level and you go, what went wrong? And it's about us helping to fix where it breaks, and we can really do that as mentors. And I'm still on the lookout for my own next mentor. That being said, if you
could be watching right now. Rebecca, we've spoken previously about you mentor and you also have a mentee. No, you are a mentor and you also have a mentor. You spoke about the mentees and that influence that they've also provided for you. Could you go into a little more detail around that and what you've learned from them?
Yeah, I do mentor quite a lot of women in our organisation, and I feel like for whatever reason, often women feel more comfortable going to other women to be their mentor, and they think they're going to understand them a little bit more. I think it's probably important to have a really good mix. So I take the approach that I've got a bit of a network of mentors who I'd go to for different things. They might not be people that I'd see all the time, but if I've got a specific challenge or a problem, there's a few people that will my head that I'll reach out to that person. So if you find yourself in a professional capacity and you have a good connection with someone and you trust them, don't let that person go, because firstly, it's nice to have a network like that, but secondly, there are benefits to having a network like that. So I would say mentoring is very important, allyship is very important. I've also had a professional coach at different points in my career, and it's really interesting to get perspectives of somebody who's slightly detached from your career as well. And I know that through working with that coach, my personal experience that I don't mind sharing, I was carrying quite a lot of limiting beliefs about myself that had been kind of experiences that had stayed with me from quite early in my career, that in my head I had processed and moved on for, but clearly I wasn't. I hadn't fully moved on, and I was still carrying some of those. And when I mentor other women, I think that's quite a common thing that I talk to them about, that they're carrying quite a lot of limiting beliefs. So identifying what's holding them back and some of the things that they think about themselves that they wouldn't necessarily admit to that many people, and then helping them work through that and breaking those things down has definitely been a component of some of the mentoring that I've done. I've also found with the women that I've mentored, and it's not exclusively women, it's men as well, but women are carrying a lot these days. So they're shouldering a lot of caring responsibilities quite often. There's pressures of cost of living. They don't always feel they're getting the recognition that they deserve. I've found a lot of women in the workplace getting late diagnosis or divergence. Women are dealing with a lot of competing priorities. And I think sometimes women are fall into that quietly competent bracket where they're working away, they're achieving results, they're very, very consistent, and they're very dependable, but they're not necessarily raising their profile. So one of the things that I talk a lot with about women is how you get the balance right, because if you don't champion yourself and if you expect the work to speak for itself, it won't always. It should, but it won't always. And I think finding a way to do that for yourself in a way that feels authentic, raises your profile, gets you the recognition that you need, is something that women need to really be working through with mentors and peers and allies. How do they get that balance right?
But we also need to promote them when they're not there.
True.
Thank you both. That's really inspiring and making me want to go out and get my own network. I need to put some more effort behind this. It sounds like you can get a lot from it, which is really, really great. We're going to dive in now a little bit into GRC. We've tackled some of the women issues, but I also really want to understand a little bit more about your day-to-day and what you guys do in your roles. So Sharon, we'll begin with you. Can you tell me about some of the work that you're doing in governance, risk and compliance at the moment that has been really impactful to your organisation?
Yeah, so as I'm sure most people could probably appreciate, Barclays is a huge and complex beast. And yeah, what we've been focusing on is leading simplification really of our risk and control frameworks to better embed them across the business, but also to, again, try and get people to understand better. Because as you'll imagine, things get layered on top of things and then it's like we actually just need to pare some of this stuff back. So we've been trying to drive really clearer accountability, removing duplication of things. So again, as that kind of layering goes on, people duplicate, whether that's reporting or content, etc. And trying to then really focus on how do we get the real meaningful conversations going on in the meetings, you know, day to day when you're dealing with incidents, etc. But it's been really challenging, I guess, to try and balance the simplification with the people who don't want to change. So there's, you know, people who've been doing it and working in a certain way for a long period of time. And also then the complexities of the systems and processes that we have to work with as well. So I think the thing we're trying to do, because we're still on this journey, is really collaborate with the business, kind of show them some early wins and tangible kind of examples so they can then get it clearer in their head and focus on, okay, actually, what does this mean to me? How is this actually going to benefit me and my business area, to kind of bring them on the journey with you? And we're trying to kind of move from, again, you touched on it earlier, Rebecca, right? This whole, we are part of that decision making. We're part of the business. We're not a tick box exercise anymore in risk. This is about strategic thinking. This is about preventing, incidents and losses, significant impact to a business and its profitability. And so then, really just trying to be more forward looking as well. We've seen quite a lot of things happen over recent years that we would never have probably thought about or predicted, right? And those things that were, plausible but further out are starting to become reality for us on a regular basis, and multiples of those happening at the same time. So again, going back to the trying to drive simpler frameworks and processes to support managing some of that, hopefully will put us in a good position to move forward into whatever the next challenge is.
Lovely. Rebecca, does that resonate with what's happening over at AXA?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is. It's very, very busy. My day is very varied, as are the days of my teams. You're jumping from an issue over here to something else, and I find that really exciting. That our days are pacey and they're challenging. And if it was an easy problem, you probably wouldn't need risk in the room. So it definitely means that the days are full. One of the things that we've been working on, and actually one of the women in my team did a fantastic job on this, is a holistic assessment of the geopolitical and macroeconomic environment, which sounds very grand, but if I could sum it up, we're just living in very, very turbulent times. And I think Sharon touched on it. I remember maybe 10 years ago, we would put together an emerging risk profile for the business, and we would be mapping out that we thought were remote, or they would be severe if they happened, but very, very unlikely. You put them in the 10 years away unlikely category. We're living through them now. So the political environment, I would describe it as fairly divisive, and the impact of what we see coming through from America and conflict in the Middle East has a real impact on our business. And we were doing lots of different bits of work to try and assess that, but we brought it all together, and it was really powerful for the board. So thinking some of the things that we would think about every day around supply chains, but then linking in some of the second order impacts on inflationary pressures and when that might start to crystallize for our business, and what it might do to supply chains if they were disrupted for an extended period, and also considering the other things that are coming through from that political environment. So the cost of living and how that impacts our customers. What decisions is it pushing them to make that were different to the decisions they might have made a few years ago? Very, very price sensitive. That creates a very challenging market to trade into. And also our people, because our people feel that cost of living. Well, our people feel that political division coming through, and people are worried. So we need to make sure our people strategies are effective in supporting people through that. So bringing all the different components together, we did that bit of work for the board, and it landed really well because they could see how we were managing a lot of our everyday work.
Wow. No day's the same. Not at the moment anyway. No. Ricky, as CEO and having to deal with all of these issues and everyone coming to you and asking what should we be doing, how do you manage that and navigate it effectively?
I think the most important part from my perspective is that every time we link it back to the business strategy, and every time we talk about initiatives in the risk domain, it's always linking it to whatever is important for our customers, and for our, obviously also for the team, but it's customers first. So what are the initiatives we need to drive to make sure that we are relevant in the market, that we, despite everything happening around us, which is, and I completely agree with both Sharon and Rebecca, it's moving so fast and it's so crazy over the past 6 years or so. But always linking it back to that and saying, okay, how does this support our strategy? And just to grab a random example, a few years ago, we landed a very large German automotive as our customer, and they had some requirements about us being certified to some specific standards that were relevant for the automotive sector. And we were not there. So we had a lot of the things, but they were not bound together in the right way. And I just had to roll up my sleeves, sit down with the team and say, okay, now we sit here until we're done, which was maybe 3 months' time or so. And we just had to work through it. But it was so important to our business strategy because we wanted to conquer Germany, so to speak. So we wanted to land a lot of customers there, and we just had to make this happen. And I just dived into it alongside the team, and it has become such a good thing for me afterwards because I'm so into the details about this, and it's really important for our business strategy. That being said, I'd say with COVID first, we did an IPO through COVID. That was a little bit of a nightmare, and I mean, you all know that if you have contracts with software providers, you put in stuff like we need your employees to work at designated offices with guest entrance, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, we had all our people sitting at home. New situation, but it says in our contracts that they have to come into work, but they're not allowed because everything is closed down. It was the same for everybody, but we were in breach of certain things. And then we were finally over COVID, and we thought, okay, now we are good. And then was the Ukraine invasion. And then there was no energy in most of Europe. And then there was a new situation. Our customers are large manufacturers. They use energy. Okay, we're in lack of supplies. What do we do? And all these things, I mean, they were surprising us all the time, but we had to have risk and the business to go very close together, coping with all of this. And finally, when we thought now things are good, then we had some tariffs coming in. And then we have the Middle East. And it was just like, it's changing so fast, and we just need to get the right people to the table, talk about how do we actually work our way through this super hard work. But it's like Nike says, just do it. You just have to sit down, do it, and you're super busy. And it is also super exciting at the same time.
Very good. I love a slogan as a marketer, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
So as we've just discussed, obviously the present day at the moment, things are happening so fast and it's hard to keep up. But when we look to the future and we look to plan for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, etc., what does the future of GRC look like for you and your team? Sharon, I'm going to kick off with you again, if that's okay. What are you guys planning for?
Yeah, and it kind of leads on from what I was saying. It's more about moving away from this kind of control and compliance mindset to actually these are teams with significant insight. They are there to help enable the business. They can do the read across from previous events and things that we've seen, the analysis that might be needed in some of these. So it's trying to move into that model where we sit alongside the business in kind of more partnership, and we do, and we are there, but I think it's even more so having that kind of, like I said, forward thinking and foresight. I think we're also getting more and more data, so it's then using that data and the intelligence from that to create better automation, to get quicker analytics, model stuff easier, etc. Alongside that simplification piece that I've already spoken about, taking some of that complexity out, because that again enables us to make decisions a lot quicker. So if you've got the data, you've got the insights, you've got the people that have been working in that space, you can then turn stuff around quickly, which Ricky, you just said sometimes you absolutely need to do that. Like I said, if it's an outage we've got in our systems, or you trying to get a contract up and running with somebody, like it doesn't matter what your business is, that stuff's super challenging, but becomes really, really important. And then, like I said, just being really that value add, that trusted advisor where people can, actually feel like risk is a function and a place where actually it's enabling us to move forward. So Like I said, it's changing that. And as much as we've got AI and all of these things coming along, that's not going to replace some of the knowledge and experience that people have got that actually gets brought to the table, and that forward thinking that perhaps, again, we're not necessarily going to get through robots at the moment.
Thank you. The next question we've got here is, where do you see the biggest opportunity for women to lead? And Rebecca, I'm going to pass that over to you, if that's all right.
No, that's a brilliant question. Thank you. There's so much opportunity, I think, for women to lead in this space. And going back to Sharon's point there is a real onus for us to demonstrate the value that we add through these teams, because, you know, there was a time when the answer would be written in a rule or in a policy or in a framework. The kind of risks that we're dealing with now, we're entering into the unknown. We won't always know the answer. And what I think women are fairly good at is accepting when they don't know the answer, and being quite flexible with their mindset, having that curiosity to think, right, okay, well, there's a risk here. We need to work through together and collaboratively how we can manage this. Nobody has all the answers anymore, because the questions have changed and the rules of the game have changed, and it's really complicated. If anybody can really confidently answer how we can control the risk of AI in 10 years' time right now, I'll give you £100. No, I shouldn't have said that. If anyone absolutely brilliant. The truth is, we just don't know. We do our best with the information we have, but we don't know. And we all need to get quite comfortable with not having the answer and not knowing. And I do think that women are quite good at that. And it's not to say men aren't, but I think women can lean into that. There are lots of studies that would suggest that women have higher levels of that emotional intelligence, that EQ. And to me, those skills become really important, because AI can't deliver that, right? AI can't replace in that respect. And when you're in a room and things are getting heated because it's hard and people are worried and concerned, that's where we start to earn our money. When you read that room and you can sense different agendas at play, and you can cool the heat in the room down through your interventions, where you can collaborate effectively. These are things I see women do incredibly well day in, day out. And I think just making sure that they recognize themselves and their skills in that respect, and also that they get credit when they are performing that role, and it's not seen as something that is just a nice to have. It's really important. You may not have made the decision, but you've facilitated the decision. That's a really important thing, to make sure that it's recognized.
That's lovely, that balance between using AI but also using your human side and your communication to get the best outcome. We're having lots of questions coming into the chat, which is brilliant, so please do send through any last ones that you have. But before we move into the Q&A, just one for all of you, and we'll start with you, Ricky. What final words of advice do you have for the next generation of women looking to progress into leadership within GRC?
I think I'm actually going to build on some of the points that Rebecca just shared. Despite I believe that AI cannot solve everything, I think my first and foremost advice to every younger woman listening in is, do start using AI, if not already, because all the young men, they're doing it. And if you don't jump on that train, it's going to be super hard. That being said, I think the most important part is that you dare to speak up, you dare to raise your hand, ask a question. And if you're in a room and you're in doubt about whether you're doing the team is doing the right thing, I promise you somebody else is in doubt, or if there's something you don't understand, there will be someone else who do not understand. And the one who raises the hand and asks will actually get the credit. So just raise your hand, speak up, remember to bring your opinion to the table. It's as valid as any other opinion. And I think it's fair of all to remember that we need to support these young women and also ask for their input when they don't bring. If you don't bring it voluntarily, somebody will ask, or hopefully someone will ask, and you should definitely speak your mind.
Lovely. Sharon, any final words of advice?
Yeah, I think, again, linking back to what I agree with everything Ricky said, but what I said earlier, like that kind of breadth of experience, make sure you're recognising and using your transferable skills, and continue to be you and be authentic in everything that you do, but most importantly, then bring others along the way with you, like cheerlead for others when you see them, speak up for people in the room, whoever that is, right?
And Rebecca?
Yeah, brilliant points, and I would echo those. I think my build would be, for women to succeed in the workplace, sometimes they're encouraged to moderate themselves, and I've definitely seen this. You make yourself a little bit small sometimes, you dampen down some of the things that are seen as not desirable traits in the workplace. So don't be too emotional, don't be too intimidating, don't be too ambitious, and we're told don't do a lot. What I would say is, don't take all that advice to heart. Try and find a way that you stay your authentic self in the workplace. If you don't, it's exhausting. And be a little bit bold and champion yourself in that context. Don't try and smooth out all of your rough edges, because actually sometimes your rough edges are the things that make you different and make you stand out and make you say something that nobody else in the room has thought of. So try and resist that temptation for other people to put you in a box, and try and find something that feels right for you, with style and an approach that works for you, but also enables you to succeed. And please speak up and champion yourself, because allyship networks are great, but it starts with you, and you've got to find a way to do that, because evidence tells us men are better at doing that than women are, and we need to get better to compete.
Lucy, may I add one advice that I got from a male mentor?
Of course.
He told me several times that I should remember that leadership roles tend to be taken, not given.
There we go. That's a bold ending, Ricky. Everyone's going to start competing. I like it. We've got 2 minutes here, so I'm going to run through some of these quick questions. The first one is there a GRC network that I could join? I actually was at a networking women's event yesterday, Risky Women. It's led by Kimberly Cole, and she does a great job. There's monthly events, so highly recommend that. And I also think if you want to continue to hear from female leaders talking about their experiences in GRC, check out our podcast, Spotlight on Women in GRC. We've had risk directors, VP of compliance, and various different people come on. So please do listen and get involved. There is a question here about the effectiveness of DE&I and how you've measured that effectiveness. Does anyone want to call out anything that's been particularly helpful, or you've had good feedback from someone about it?
Yeah, I think feedback is the point, actually. So every event or activity we run, we try and get feedback from the people involved, and then continuously improve those things, right? So take that feedback and then make it better, make it fix those problems and stuff. But it's definitely getting that feedback and then listening to just actively listen to people around you, right? People are saying there's a lack of this, or there's a gap here, like, again, jump in it and try and find a solution for it, really, because often you'll find that there is. And like you said, there's so many networks, people to talk to, you probably don't even need to reinvent the wheel. Someone's probably done something in order to plug that gap as well. So use your network to talk about what goes on in other organisations in order to do that. But we do have annual staff surveys as well. So, again, we monitor the culture and the mindset from the whole organisation as well to check that we're on track, really, with our ambitions and where we really want to be from that perspective.
As well as the surveys that we run in AXA, we do a specific inclusion survey. So it gives everybody the opportunity to feed in really specifically. And I always say, if you don't measure it, you won't change it. So we do have a lot of data that gives us a view on how underrepresented groups are moving on and up through the organisation, and we track that really carefully. And all of our interventions, all of our networks, and all of the specific initiatives that we run are designed to try and improve that accessibility for people in those underrepresented groups to move on and up, and that includes women.
So feedback, listening, communication, connection, and leveraging your skills. Thank you all so much for your time today, and hopefully we see some of you in person on the 2nd of July at the Women in GRC Awards. Best of luck, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that session, Lucy. I loved that. It was so good to focus on the evolving face of DEI programs, the recognition we all have bias, women too, we're all diverse, and the whole purpose of DEI is to make sure we're getting the best out of everyone to maximize value. And all of that, and then some